about all the little rituals that you have throughout your day. Going to Starbucks, grabbing a coffee on your way to work. Maybe you grab some gas at the gas station around the corner from your office at lunch. Maybe you go get some groceries, get a few things for dinner on your way home. Now I want you to go back and think about all of the individuals who took part in those daily rituals. The barista who handed you back your coffee, the gas station attendant, the cashier who handed you back your change with a smile. Those are what I like to call the familiar strangers in our lives. They're the people that we meet every single day who take part in our daily rituals, whose names and stories we often don't know. As if there's an invisible barrier that we create, separating ourselves from them, that we rarely cross. Maybe you're shy, or maybe you just don't think you have enough time, or maybe you don't like talking to people. Trust me, I can understand the apprehension of not wanting to engage people that you don't know. As much as I loved documenting people through the lens of my camera, when I was younger, I really considered myself quite shy. So I was more of the observer of modern life as opposed to the engager of modern life. It wasn't until I moved home to become a single mother that I decided to start a little social experiment. I decided that I was going to actually cross over the invisible barrier, engage the strangers in my life. When I did this, incredible things started happening. I had such wonderful conversations, and I learned about love, joy, adversity, and pain. And out of this, I created the interactive art exhibition titled Familiar Strangers. 36 portraits were sandwiched between 2 layers of plexiglass and hung from 3 different lengths of chain throughout the gallery. I not only wanted to engage and take portraits of the strangers in my life, but I wanted to engage my community as well. So I invited them to walk around and through each installation piece so that they were also forced to come face to face with their own familiar strangers. As I broke down barriers and I built relationships, these strangers not only became my friends, but incredible teachers. Lily Carty, she taught me about how she is the coolest advocate for persons with different abilities. Artist Alice Hoskins, she taught me that age is definitely just a number that you do not let get in your way. And my neighbor, Mr. Joe, he taught me that you could turn something as pesky as a weed into something as delicious as dandelion wine. But it was one familiar stranger who became instrumental in creating a ripple effect of change, not only in my life, but in the lives of so many people, farther than I could even comprehend, and her name was Otelia Chirica. Otelia was a professor at St. Francis Xavier University, and although my mom and her had become best friends over the years, I had been living in other countries, so I really didn't get to know her until I moved home and asked her to be a part of my exhibition. Through our conversations, I started to learn about how much she was passionate about education. And she shared with me that she was once a young girl living in rural Zimbabwe, and that she suffered in poverty, and that she really had to fight to get her education. Because she did that, she became the first woman in her entire clan and village to not only graduate high school, but to go on to get her undergraduate degree, followed by her master's and her PhD. And this inspired a legacy of women in her community to pursue higher education. And because of her, there were female doctors, lawyers, and nurses, and professors all over the world from her community. Otelia was so inspiring to me. And, you know, I was so inspired that I created a documentary about her life. She loved to call herself my African sister. And she'd say, "Cara, Well, truthfully, the fact was that at the time when I filmed that documentary, my business was struggling from the recession. So she'd always tell me, I'm going to be your manager. And she'd say, Cara, you're worth no less than $500 a day. And if anybody has a problem with that, they can come talk to your manager and your African sister. Well, trust me, you did not want to mess with my African sister. She really believed in me in a time when it was difficult to believe in myself. And I couldn't help but think back to another stranger who I'd met years before, who also played a part in the Familiar Strangers series legacy. I want you to think about the lives and the stories and the people that you have met in your life that have made amazing impacts on you. Now, I'm sure there are way too many to count. But if you could follow the ripple back in time, could you pinpoint when that first stone was cast? The Familiar Strangers photography series was a stone that my mother tossed into the still pond of my life. Okay, so I grew up in the 80s, and in the 80s, we had all of these campaigns around stranger danger. It was in school and on TV on Saturday morning cartoons. It was everywhere. My parents were awesome at teaching me how to be safe, but my mom was different. She really understood the importance of engaging with people and learning their stories, even if you didn't know them. She knew that their stories could be something that could leave a lasting impact on you. It was 1996 when my mom met this woman in her office. This woman had the most incredible story of overcoming adversity. My mom was just floored. And she wanted to invite her to come back to her woodworking shop, because my mom had a woodworking shop at the time. She invited her to come back to pretend like she was buying something from the woodworking shop so that she could meet me and maybe have a positive influence on me. My mom was sneaky like that. I was 18 years old at the time, and I had just undergone 2 major brain surgeries to remove a benign brain tumor that caused me to have over 100 seizures a day. As much as I was really excited about my new lease on life after my surgery, the truth was I was flung into a severe depression. I was absolutely exhausted from being on the treadmill of seizures, memory loss, failing grades, repeat, that when I went back to grade 12 to finish and failed by 1 credit, I had nothing left in me. And every day my mom would try to encourage me to go back to grade 12. And every day I would cry on the spot and say, no way. So my mom, in that sneaky way she likes to work, she knew that if she couldn't get through to me, she'd find a way. And this woman was her in. I was sitting on the sofa, eating ice cream and watching music videos, as we liked to do back then, when my mom brought me into the wood shop to introduce me to this woman, pretending it was all a coincidence. Was probably one of the most beautiful, loving, influential stones she could have ever tossed into my life, because my mom was right. That woman was awesome. Her story of overcoming adversity was exactly what I needed to hear at that time. She made me feel hope when all hope was lost. She was now a successful CEO of her own company. She grabbed my hand that day and she looked me in the eye and she said, Cara, you are so young and you have been through so much. Don't you owe it to yourself to go back to high school? Well, in that moment, her words just moved through my entire body and something within me shifted. It was as if for the first time I got a glimpse of what self-love looked like, but man, it was just a glimpse. I had a long way to go. But it was enough for me to go and sign up for my final year of grade 12 the next day. Her words and my mom's wish for me played like a mantra in my mind on repeat. And I couldn't stop telling everybody who would listen. In fact, if I saw anybody overcoming adversity and they were feeling down about themselves, I'd point out everything they'd overcome, and I'd say the same thing to them. Don't you owe it to yourself to try? Like me, They hadn't thought of this simple act of self-love. And it gave me enough courage to finish my final year of high school. I went into my final year of high school, and I started my first year of my undergraduate degree. That's when I came up with the idea of the Familiar Stranger series. But I did something that might not surprise you. I allowed my inner Eeyore to take over my mind. And I told myself, you can't do it anyway. But the idea had plans for me, and it wouldn't leave me. As I traveled the world and I went around capturing people, I was still so intrigued by the power of simple interactions. I would ask myself, who are these people? Who do they love? What do they fear? 10 years later, when I looked into the eyes of my greatest creation, my newborn son, and the completion of my photography series, I couldn't help but think to myself, I no longer was just the onlooker. I too was a stone casting a ripple in the lives of other people. This became very clear to me when 2 years after Otilia's documentary came out, her life ended as a victim of domestic violence. It was a shock so profound, it shook our community to the core. Abuse has a way of disguising itself, and none of us had any idea what kind of danger Otilia was in. And to me, she was just a warrior right till the very end. She believed in people right until the very end. I had to make a choice. I knew how the media was going to play out, and this choice wasn't easy. I didn't want to hurt her friends or her family, and I wanted to do this thing, but it might have been too soon. But I knew that the media was probably going to post her picture as a piece of yellow tape in front of her house, and she was so much more than that. She was my fiery African sister. So I posted her video, and that video went across the globe so fast that her story started spreading around the world, and all of these stories of how Otilia had changed their life started coming forward. A couple months later, after I was dealing with my grief, I got an email. It was from a professor and a colleague of Otilia's. I read it, and it said, "Cara, I want to let you know that an anti-bullying campaign has been created in Alberta, inspired by your Familiar Strangers series and Otilia's life. It's called the Familiar Strangers Initiative." And in the description read, "A rural school in Alberta has given the challenge to grade 3 students to reach out their hand just to say hi or to invite a child to play that they don't know. Maybe you'll be this friend in need, and that day, maybe someday, that they will be a friend to you." I looked at my phone in complete disbelief. And I'll tell you something, grief has a really weird way of pushing you up out of your body as if you're looking down and you are in a state of complete disconnection. But in that moment, I felt truly connected, and I understood how truly connected we all were. You see, the Familiar Strangers Initiative might have been a simple concept, but it was seeped in a powerful legacy. It started with my mother, who taught me the power of simple interactions, introducing me to a stranger who taught me that I owed it to myself to try, giving me the courage to create the Familiar Stranger series, introducing me to my mentor, Otilia, who taught me about faith, hope, perseverance, and resiliency, whose life stories spanned out through the world in her documentary, inspiring others to create an anti-bullying campaign where children were out on a playground, turning little children that they didn't know into friends. How much farther that ripple has gone, I will never know, but I do know this. You matter. Your lives matter. Your actions matter. And if you choose to walk over the barrier and engage with a stranger in your life, you don't know the positive outcomes that can come out of that. And I'll leave you with one last question. Don't you owe it to yourself to try?